The elderly woman stood trembling. In the gleaming lobby of Manhattan's most prestigious investment firm, her designer handbag clutched against her chest like a shield, despite the Hermes scarf draped elegantly around her shoulders and the subtle glint of diamonds at her ears. She might as well have been invisible. Executives in sharp suits brushed past her, their eyes sliding away as if repelled by some invisible force. She had flown 8,000 miles seeking help to save her late husband's crumbling empire, only to discover that money couldn't buy her the one thing she desperately needed, someone who would simply see her as human. Chen Wei had once commanded boardrooms across Shanghai, her decisions moving markets and creating thousands of jobs. But that was before her husband's sudden death, before the vultures began circling their company, before she realized that the language barrier separating her from help was wider than the Pacific Ocean itself. Now at 73, she stood alone in a foreign city where her accent made people impatient, where her carefully rehearsed English phrases crumbled under pressure, where her desperation was met with polite dismissals and appointments that never materialized. She had been waiting for 40 minutes. The receptionist, a young woman with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes, had stopped making eye contact after the first 10. Chen Wei understood enough English to catch the whispered conversations, the subtle headshakes, the way appointments were suddenly unavailable when she approached. She wasn't naive. She knew what they saw, an elderly Asian woman who couldn't speak proper English, probably confused, possibly lost. Certainly not the billionaire investor their firm supposedly welcomed with open arms. Her hands shook as she checked her phone for the 100th time. The messages from Shanghai were growing more urgent. Her company's board was planning a vote to oust her. Creditors were demanding payment. Without the American investors her late husband had courted, everything they had built together would collapse. She had 1 week. Just 1 week to secure the funding that would save not just her legacy, but the livelihoods of 8,000 employees who depended on her company. "Ma'am, I've told you, you need an appointment." The receptionist's voice had taken on an edge of irritation, louder than necessary, as if volume could compensate for Chen Wei's supposed lack of understanding. "Do you understand?" "Appointment." Chen Wei's face burned with humiliation. She understood perfectly. What she couldn't do was make them understand her. Couldn't bridge the gap between her desperate need and their bureaucratic indifference. She opened her mouth to try once more, but the English words that had seemed so clear in her hotel room now tangled on her tongue. That's when she heard it. A quiet voice, speaking Mandarin, soft as a prayer. "阿姨, 您还好吗?" "Auntie, are you okay?" Chen Wei's head snapped up. Standing beside a cleaning cart, wearing a navy blue janitor's uniform, was a young man with kind eyes and dirt under his fingernails. He couldn't have been more than 30. With the lean build of someone who worked hard for every dollar and the careful posture of someone used to making themselves small in spaces that didn't welcome them. The relief that flooded through Chen Wei was so intense she nearly wept. "你会说中文?" "You speak Chinese." The words tumbled out in a rush. Months of isolation and fear suddenly finding release. She began explaining everything, the words flowing faster than wisdom, about her company, her husband's death, the Americans who wouldn't listen, the appointments she couldn't secure, the time running out. Marcus Chen had been pushing a mop across marble floors for 3 years, ever since his engineering degree from a Chinese university had proven worthless in America. He had learned to be invisible, had perfected the art of moving through spaces where people like him were meant to clean but never to speak. But something in this woman's eyes called to him, reminded him of his own grandmother who had raised him in Guangzhou before he'd chased the American dream across an ocean. "Wait here," he told her, and before she could ask why, he had disappeared through a service door. What happened next would be debated in that office for years. Marcus didn't go to his supervisor. He didn't follow protocol. Instead, he took the service elevator to the executive floor, walked past 3 assistants with the confidence of someone who belonged, and knocked on the door of David Richardson, the firm's senior managing partner. Richardson looked up from his computer, surprise flickering across his face at the sight of a janitor in his doorway. "Can I help you?" "Sir, there's a woman downstairs, Chen Wei. She's trying to save her company." Her husband was Chen Zhao, the Shanghai industrialist Marcus. Spoke carefully, his accent thicker from nerves, but his message clear. She has the meeting confirmation email. She flew here specifically for this appointment, but no one downstairs will help her, because her English isn't perfect, Richardson. His expression shifted from annoyance to embarrassment to calculation. Marcus watched him type something into his computer saw. The moment recognition dawned. Chen Zhao's widow? She's been downstairs this whole time? Richardson was already standing, reaching for his jacket. That is a $200 million potential investment. How did no one... He stopped himself, and Marcus saw the moment of uncomfortable understanding cross his face. 5 minutes later, Chen Wei found herself ushered into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooking Manhattan. David Richardson apologized profusely, offered her tea, assured her that there had been a terrible misunderstanding. But Chen Wei's eyes kept drifting to Marcus, who had been invited, to stay and translate this janitor who had seen her when no one else would. The meeting that followed changed everything. With Marcus translating, Chen Wei's brilliance shone through. Her 20-year plan for sustainable manufacturing, her innovative approach to worker equity, her vision for cross-Pacific partnership, it was everything Richardson's firm had been searching for. By the time the sun set over the Hudson River, they had outlined a deal that would save her company and create a new model for international investment. As Richardson's team rushed to draft preliminary agreements, Chen Wei pulled Marcus aside. "Why did you help me?" she asked in Mandarin. "You could have lost your job." Marcus smiled, thinking of his grandmother, of all the times people had dismissed him because of his accent or his uniform, or the color of his skin. "Because someone should have," he said simply. "Because you deserve to be seen." 3 months later, Marcus Chen walked into his first day of work at Chen Wei Industries as their new Director of International Relations. Chen Wei had insisted, had refused to sign any deal until Richardson's firm helped expedite Marcus's credentials recognition. She had seen something in that moment of kindness, had recognized the kind of character that couldn't be taught in business schools. The story might have ended there, a neat tale of gratitude and reward. But Chen Wei understood that true kindness multiplies. She established a foundation dedicated to helping immigrants navigate professional barriers, funding credential recognition and language services. Marcus became its first board member, still remembering what it felt like to be invisible. Years later, people would ask Marcus about that day, about the risk he took, about how one moment of compassion had changed his life. He would always shake his head, insisting they had it backward. "She didn't need me to save her," he would say. "She just needed someone to listen." The kindness wasn't mine. It was always there, in her strength, in her dignity. I just spoke the words that helped others finally hear it. But on quiet evenings, when Marcus visited Chen Wei at her restored Shanghai headquarters, they would sit together and remember that Manhattan lobby, that moment when humanity bridged every gap that language and prejudice had built. And they would smile, knowing that the most powerful force in business isn't capital or connections. It's the simple recognition that we're all just humans, trying to be seen,